Programang ito ay rated SPG. Striktong patnubay at gabay ng magulang ang kailangan. Maaaring may masiselang tema, lengguwahe, karahasan, sexual, horror o droga na hindi angkop sa mga bata.
Known as being the most expensive building in the United States at the time, the Eastern State Penitentiary became a prototype in a design to 300 prisons. The facility was operated under the Pennsylvania system from 1829 to 1913. This system, used by the Quakers, was designed to force the incorrigibles sender to look inside themselves and find God. In reality, the system, which placed inmates in complete solitude, drove many a sane man to madness. Prisoners at Eastern State had a toilet, table, bunk, and a Bible in their cells, in which they were locked all but 1 hour a day. When the prisoners did leave their cells, a black hood would be placed over their head, so they could not see any other prisoners as they were guided through the halls of the prison. Interaction and any form of communication between inmates were forbidden. Inmates live in a life like a mundane solitude and would only get a glimpse of sunlight known as the eye of God, which came through a split in the prison ceiling. In desperate need of human interaction, prisoners would tap on pipes or whisper through vents to each other. If caught, the penalty was brutal. The water bath. The inmates who broke the rules risked being dunked in a bath of ice-cold water, then hung from a wall for the night. During the winter months, when this punishment was popular, the water on the inmate's skin would form a layer of ice before morning. The mud chair was named such because it was not uncommon for an inmate to go mad before his punishment ended. Inmates will be trapped into a chair with leather strips so tightly it was impossible for them to make the smallest movements. They will sit for days without food until the circulation in their body almost stopped from the tightness of the straps and the lack of movement. Iron gag. The most deadly punishment was known as the iron gag and is specifically designed for those inmates who refused to obey the no communication policies. An iron collar was clamped onto the tongue of the inmate and then chained to his wrists, which were strapped high behind their back. Any movements resulted in a tearing of the tongue and severe bleeding. Many inmates who suffered this torture died from loss of blood before their tormented death. The hole. Dug under block number 14, the hole was nothing but a pit in the ground where incorrigible inmates would stay locked, sometimes for a week. There was no light, little air, and those thrown into its tortuous grip would receive the water and a slice of bread, if they got it to be, before the rats and roaches. It has been reported that the Quakers were not responsible for the punishment the inmates were forced to endure. The extreme penitence was something hard stuff in the prison designed and enforced. Ghost stories of Eastern State Penitentiary. Since its closure, visitors, employees, and those researching paranormal activity have reported heard unexplained eerie sounds throughout the prison. The locksmith. One of the major episodes reported occurred to a blacksmith doing restoration work in cell block 4. According to the tale, he was working to remove a 140-year-old lock from a cell door when a massive force overcame him so powerfully he was unable to move. Some believe when he removed the key, it opened a gateway to the horrific past and offered the spirits caught behind it bars a pathway out. The man spoke of experiencing an out-of-body state as he was drawn toward the negative energy which burst through the cell. Anguished faces appeared on the cell wall. Hundreds of distorted forms whirled around the cell block, and one dominating form seemed to be beckoned the locksmith to him. The man's experience was so vivid, years after he would shudder in fear when he talked about it. Today, the penitentiary is open to the public. In a typical year, maybe 24 paranormal investigations take place in the cell blocks, and according to Assistant Program Director Brett Bertolino, they almost always find evidence of activity. Tourists and employees have reported hearing weeping, giggling, and whispering coming from the inside the prison walls of Eastern State Penitentiary.